Got it.
Teresa and Karen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Thursdays with Culture Talk. I'm excited to be here. My name is Cynthia Forstman, and I'm one of the co-founders of Culture Talk. And I'm here this morning with Teresa Agresta.
Good morning. Nice to see you all.
From Saratoga Springs, New York. And
Yeah.
I introduce Karen Carey in a little more detail later in a minute. Karen, you're also in Saratoga Springs, New York.
Yep.
Cool. If you are tuning in to Thursdays with Culture Talk for the first time or catching this restream later, just a quick word about what we're up to here. If you work in the area of workplace culture, or you work for an organization and are part of an organizational culture, you know that those can be tough conversations because workplace culture is difficult. It's challenging to talk about it. We don't really have a language. It's a conversation that many times we see get stuck on a surface level, with kind of empty sounding words trying to describe what is our culture here. But the reason it's abstract and difficult to define is because it's really about the experience, and it's around the experience that gets created between people, right? The human interaction, the decision making. And so Culture Talk is a tool set that was designed to allow the individuals who are part of organizations, the leaders, and the organization itself to create a common language, to make culture something that feels more tangible, something we can measure, something we can shift, something we can uplift, and that we can share with each other. So we go live about twice a month, and we're in a series of conversations we've been doing all year, what we call 6 critical paths. And the path that we are on now is called leadership development. How do you take Culture Talk, a tool set, and a framework that we call Archetype, which is just human story, and how do you use it to develop leaders? So with that, I will pass to Teresa.
Okay, awesome. Great setup there, Cynthia. Thank you. I am going to introduce Karen Carey. Karen and I are going to have a little conversation today about hard conversations, one component of the culture, which is so necessary to move into new, innovative ways of doing business or of being with each other in relationship and accomplishing great things that are hard to get to if you aren't able to walk through that door and have difficult conversations. So that's a really important component of leadership development. So Karen and I have known one another, as Cynthia said, we're here in the same region in New York, and we have known one another for a long time. About 10 years ago, probably over 10 years ago, we first began working together. And, we worked on actually a brand for Karen's business. And that was her first introduction to Archetype and this methodology that we use. And she was definitely one of those very excited, lean in type clients who embraced the thinking and understood it at a really deep and personal level. And that's why when we started our certification program, we invited Karen to be part of our very first cohort, and she enthusiastically jumped in and has been part of the Culture Talk network and a really important player in spreading the methodology and bringing this work forward. So we're excited to welcome Karen Carey. I'm going to ask you, Karen, to tell a little bit more about yourself, but I think your story begins earlier in your career, how you started doing this type of work. I think you've got a fascinating trajectory, how you got there. Started, I think, back in the 90s. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
That's aging me, isn't it? Yeah, back in the 90s, I had a hair salon, and I was insanely focused on doing things better. I had been in the service industry before that and knew what customer service and good feelings felt like. So I really felt like we could up-level both our strategies and our customer service. I really, really, really wanted an innovative way for the customers to have an experience as opposed to getting a haircut or a massage or whatever they were getting, right? And my other obsession was that we could all become better humans and collaborate better together and up our standards together, as opposed to this person's this and this person's that, and all of that stuff, which happens in every business. And I just really wanted to do it better. And I kept asking one particular vendor of ours, I would be like, we want to do this better. You need to find us something. And so he finally came into me one day and he was like, you're going to love me. I have found you the most amazing thing. And we got to be part of a pilot program from an organization in the UK coming into the United States. And it was all about team building, customer service, strategies, and they were way ahead of their time.
Oh my God. I think you are ahead of your time. I mean, you haven't got your archetypes down there, but I know that magician is one of them. And that kind of like gets to that big picture you were painting. It definitely feels like you were ahead of the curve back in the 90s, like thinking like this.
Yeah,
I don't know. Tell me more about the pilot program 365.
Well, first off, I was driving everybody crazy because I really wanted to do it better. But magician, innocent, and jester. So we're also going to have a good time while we're doing it. And so 365, it was called 365, and they are still going in the UK, different company purchased. That's a different thing. But so there were a bunch of salons and we were all getting this training, and 2 people out of all those salons got picked, and I was shocked, as you can imagine. What? Myself and another person from Rumors, who was also, we were doing the work. We were making it work. We were like, wow, this is so cool. And so we got to train in Europe, and then I continued on to do some customer service and team training for some people here in the United States. And just like so many cool things came out of that.
So what happens in your salon? Like what were the things that you started noticing?
Okay. So first off, like we got braver about what was important in the salon. We had actual training for answering the phone, believe it or not. Like answering the phone's important. People feeling like safe to come in and like being heard. And so our appointments were better. We had very specific consultations. We actually sat down instead of standing over the person. We would sit next to them. The first question we would ask was, when was the last time you loved your hair? And then as that was for first time clients, obviously, because, of course they love it.
Great question. It's a great question. Anyone with hair can relate to that.
Can relate to that question, right?
Yeah.
And just like, we served, tea and coffee with cookies on the side and made people feel like they were having an experience. We taught our team to bring it out of the client, not to talk about themselves. And, we're as hairdressers, we are used to that, but also the more interaction talking about us, and so it was sort of just an up leveling. It wasn't like we never talked about ourselves, but so there were so many amazing things. The team, we took them out and showed them to restaurants so that we could sort of critique how was the service. We took them to excellent places and it wasn't so excellent, and not so excellent places and it was great, and so like to see okay, what is this actually about?
So what was the impact of that in the salon? Like how did that show up? What kind of results did you get?
We had a lot more fun and we had so much loyalty. It was insane.
Mm.
We hardly had anyone leave our salon, one or two people over the time, because we were good to work for. And
I'm curious too, like, did we even use the term like retention and engagement in the 90s?
no, loyalty. That's the only word that was around then. But we literally, our team was so awesome. And the customers would actually come in and just hang out sometimes, which was a little bit annoying sometimes, but, but
All that loyalty, right?
Oh, hey, can I have a cup of tea or, coffee? We got some cookies in the back, It didn't happen a lot, but it was actually really cool when it did. And so, yeah, so we just had really amazing experiences. Yeah.
That's awesome. I know there's more to the salon story. We're going to come back to that later. But what happened for you? So move on from the salon a little bit. You have a new chapter in your life, sort of like lead us to today. So what happened for you after the salon?
Yes. So I met my lovely husband and we moved around the country. I won't tell you how many times and how many places because you don't need to
That's
know.
another story. That's another LinkedIn
story. But I studied a million different things in that time. And one of the things that I finally came to was I went to accomplishment coaching and it was a year-long program in person, obviously. And that was my next obsession and became a coach. And so coaching I embraced that ever since. I bring all my tools with me, but it's like, literally the first day of class, I sat back in my chair, I took a deep breath and said, thank you. I have finally found what I've been looking for. Because it's, the work, the internal work, but also the strategies.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I started speaking and, working with companies and individuals, executives and entrepreneurs, and just like love it.
Well, and so I know because you like fresh new things that you are also right now in the launch of your next iteration and a new collaboration. So bring us to today. Tell us about Morgan Carey Co.
Okay, so I have a really good friend, Robin, and we've done a lot of work together.
Hey, Robin.
That's right. Hats off to Robin.
Oh my God, she's so great. And so somehow it came about that myself and my husband and Robin and her husband, Kevin and Jay, decided to go into business together. We all have different backgrounds. Like mine is, mine. Kevin's he had manufacturing companies all over the world, brought the first CAD CAM system into the United States, and he's a speaker's coach and he's got all
an amazing speaker. I can vouch for. He's done a lot of coaching with me. Yes.
Exactly. Right. And Robin and Jay, Robin, I can't even begin to tell her background. Like it's so big. It's like branding, web design, but beyond that, coaching, getting people clear on their brand, all kinds of things, right?
And now today a CultureTalk certified partner as well, right? So integrating the Archetype work into her work. Yeah. So it sounds like you guys are really helping with a broad swath of business needs, but I know there's a starting point for you, and that's that understanding what's kind of happening below the surface. Like, what are the themes that are running through it? When does somebody call Morgan Carey Co? Like, why and when should they call you in, and how are you going to start like with that engagement?
Yeah. So obviously, having any kind of an organization has its challenges. And so how I see it is, and I've used this word for about 100 years now. I'm not 100, but I'm close. There's sort of an undercurrent of things that happens. Whether it's at the top, whether it's the team, it's all a team, right? But there's an undercurrent that flows through everything. And so that undercurrent kind of sides pulls everything. It messes with everything because
Mhm.
they don't know who they are. They don't understand each other. They don't have hard conversations. They don't. And so when you get in touch with us is when you notice like, okay, you become like, something's got to change. And I don't actually know what it is necessarily. And we've got some challenges. I'd really like to work through them. I'd like to, innovate somehow.
Mm.
Just
It
love,
sounds like they might have been searching similar to you when you were in the salon to some
Right.
degree.
yeah,
Right.
just
Yeah.
love that image. I just want to pause. I've never heard it expressed that way. And it's like you nailed it. Like it's so hard you feel it, but you don't like know what it is.
Thank you. Yes. That just helped me. So yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's true. It's not only is it really bringing clarity to what's happening that's intangible, but it also for me paints this picture because in undercurrents I can see that. You know what I mean?
It moves you, right? You're moving with it, but you don't even know what it is.
I mean, think about it. It can pull you out to sea and you don't even know where it's going and you don't know why it's happening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I just love it when people are brave enough to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I also really appreciate about this is there's an undercurrent at play, whether you acknowledge it or not. And when somebody starts to at least be brave enough to say there is something that we need to uncover, that feels like a first really important step to raise their hand and say, oh, help, or maybe they think they know what's going on. And I bet a lot of times they know part of it, but I think that's where the archetypes can be super helpful in naming what is this undercurrent, like what's going on here.
I mean, the archetypes are so brilliant. Like as Teresa said, I just fell in love with them immediately. I love things that show us, archetypes aren't putting us in a box. It's about expanding our understanding of ourselves and the world around us, right? And our strengths and our shadows or patterns. And so we always start with the archetypes. Whoever, whether it's an executive or an entrepreneur or a team, we always start with the archetypes because it gives them, it's the start of the foundation. If you don't know your language and you don't know their language and you don't understand that not everybody, people just have this assumption that everybody's like them. People say, I just don't understand. Like, I just don't get it. Like, why'd they do that? I'm like, they're not you. And that's why I'm so, like, as you can tell, very passionate about using archetypes in my work.
Yeah. So, I mean, this, I love this. They're not you, right? Like, oh, duh. Like, that blows my mind. No kidding. That's so interesting. But it's true. People definitely have this view of the world that comes from their own perspective.
Yes.
When you work with teams and leaders, like, do you prefer to start with, which direction do you walk in? Like, do you work first with the leaders and then with the whole team, or is it better to work with the whole team from your perspective? And
well, there's always going to be some conversation with some leader, right? Whether it's the board, the bringing me in because we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I personally, when we start to work together, this is such a hard question to answer because honestly, my approach is very individual. And so, but we have to work with the leaders. We have to. You can't, in my experience, you cannot just work with the team and expect things to change because they will not. It all starts at the top and trickles down. And we have to embrace that instead. Believe me, I was doing the teaching, but I was learning and changing and developing who I was. And, it took a lot to understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And not be a jerk myself if, if,
Yeah.
if that was the case,
Sometimes it happens, right?
Yeah, sometimes it happens, right? Or
Yeah.
not be so shocked about a conversation or whatever.
Yeah. You had mentioned when we were chatting about this that sometimes when they get to that place, when an organization gets to that place, either they're dealing with stepping too fast into a conflict, so challenging things without understanding, or avoiding a conflict. So that yin and yang of too much or too little around conflict seems to be a key juncture. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, because one of the things is if you're a person who wants to implement really fast, and I get it, like I worked with, like, let's take this example. There's an organization, they need 3 new people, like they're trying to provide, not, so that means that because it's a nonprofit, that organization has to go out and get money for it. It just doesn't come from nowhere, right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe this person is just focusing on getting those 3 people, trying to get it done. And then the people feel sort of dismissed and not listened to, right? Because they're
the existing team, you mean?
Right. Move it.
Yeah.
Move it. Let's do it. I got things to do. I got places to be, and and then the other people, then that starts the gossip and the, and the against, but it's so amazing when they start to understand each other. It's like, oh, I had no idea that's what you were doing, and the concept. I mean, I fall in love with leaders because really they know that they pay the consequence if the place falls apart. Right. And so they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that things happen that need to happen.
So it's like that underlying motivation that they share, like all leaders share some aspect of this motivation.
Some aspect of it, like the hero, right? What leader doesn't have hero? I mean, I don't have much hero. I've got some, but
but we can all flex it. I mean, that's an interesting part about Archetype. When we step into a new role, we can actually develop, even if it's underdeveloped in us.
Exactly. And it's probably about halfway up now, so I'm doing better.
You're working on that. Yeah.
They're all,
Yeah. I also love how you talked about sort of the consequences, that sort of that heavy weight of the consequences that falls to the leader. If they don't have this awareness, or if they are not willing to have those tough conversations, really, when it all comes back down to it, like, how do you do conflict the right way? And let's go back to the salon. So, the consequences, right? I mean, tell us what happened.
Oh, yes. Well, let's just say I lost my business. So I was in charge of all things people, and innocent, well, I deny it sometimes, is kind of my highest archetype, like happy endings, positive outlook, everything is possible. Trust, right? I've had to learn to do that a little differently, right? Because I need to have the hard conversations when they're necessary, and ask the right questions. So what happened was, and my partner was, the money and, all that kind of stuff, right? And so I didn't understand what she did, or maybe value it enough. And she didn't understand what I did, and definitely did not value it enough. And there was sort of this thing. And so when she said to me, I'm not going to, I don't want to do hair anymore. I actually just want to do all the other stuff. And I was like, well, if we can afford it, great. But whatever. Like, I trust, like, if you're saying that and you're in charge of money, then you must know what you're doing.
You must know, right?
Instead of saying, how's that going to work? What's going to happen? What do you think about this? What could we, is that going to impact things? No, I was like, yeah, I got these people. We're good, And so ultimately we went out of business. We had a forced move in there. Right. And so, but that was the essence of it, was we
undercurrent.
Undercurrent. I didn't even know the questions to ask. So that's why it's so important, I think, to have outside sources who really understand what you could possibly go through.
What the dynamic is. Yeah.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
nothing like that personal experience of disaster, coming close to disaster, or that those would end up in the rear view mirror looking like positive things that helped us on our journey.
Yeah.
What would you do differently today? What would you change around that, like willingness to have hard conversations?
Yeah, so if you know me now, I'm very willing to have conversations. And let's say, for instance, I went on a trip with someone once and they ended up having the biggest meltdown. And it made it really unpleasant for a couple of days. I did not take it personally. And I waited until there was no charge for me. And then I took this person and I sat down and I said, that kind of interaction cannot happen for me. It's the same thing at work, right? We have to say, okay, instead of being angry, instead of being like, what a jerk, instead of being like, oh, I'm not even going to deal with that, like me. Not anymore. And, I mean, take a breath and do your archetype stuff. Find ways. If you don't want to do this, find ways to look at it differently. Understand find out where that person is coming from. Ask questions. I do a little training around, chance or choice. How do you see this? How do what are your triggers? What are your patterns? How do you want to do this? And just saying that in itself gives you an opportunity to look at like what's happening here. And for me, obviously, as you both know, I'm willing to not make the other person wrong while we're having a hard conversation.
The way you framed that, chance or choice.
Yeah.
Again, these key anchors, like these little gems you're throwing out there.
Loaded. I love them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much in that. I'd love if you would share with us the chance or choice material. That would be awesome because, as you know, so much of the growth in our own network and our materials and resources is the genesis of that is what's happening live in the partner network and the way that you're deploying. So
yeah,
that sounds like a juicy one.
Yeah. And it's so straightforward. And, we're talking about humans, right? And we're all humans, at least on a certain level, as far as I know. And come on, laugh. You're supposed to laugh then. Jester is also one of my archetypes. So we're all humans learning how to be better humans. And I actually kind of call it being our best selves. That doesn't mean being right or perfect all the time. Like it's a process. You know me over the years, you guys, like it's been a growth. I will never stop learning and growing.
And vice versa, just to share. I mean, I'm so appreciating, like we go forward and back and to journey.
Yes. And it's a beautiful journey if we allow it to be. Like you can tell, like, honestly, like I was like, am I going to be good enough with teams, And then, I just started doing it. I got asked to do this and then I got asked to do that. And would you do this and do that? And then, I don't know. And I just love it so much. Can you do what you love, even though you're scared of it?
Yeah, stepping into the hard opportunities or the big challenges. I think all of that becomes so much easier when you're willing to have the hard conversations, or another way of stating it might be when you're willing to get, deeply honest.
Yeah, get real. I was going to say, get real, right?
Before Brene Brown was around, I used to say vulnerable people are unwilling to be vulnerable and exposed, and that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes, vulnerable and exposed.
Yeah, and I love, Karen, that you're bringing that to leaders, because when a leader models that, and we've seen that when a leader gets comfortable being uncomfortable or stepping into something uncomfortable, it's like, I feel like it just like, it's like loosens up something else for everybody else. Right?
Yeah. When they show that real side of themselves, then you can understand, oh, maybe they're scared, maybe they're challenged, maybe those consequences, maybe if I understood, like, what is the impact of those consequences? For a leader, I love the way you talked about that. Now I have the opportunity to take on a part of that load, share that in the outcome, look outside of what my experience is, to look out for the good of the whole, to
I appreciate that the undertow is pulling and not part might be contributing to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm curious. So you go in and your team at Morgan Carey Co with all these, real different mix of strengths, leading with this. Let's get honest and look at what's happening at the leadership level. Let's peel the onion and understand how that's impacting the team and what's happening and what does each individual need. Like, what doors does that open, right? What's the so what now what can happen when that is the starting point?
Well, what I love to see is, and this is going to sound crazy, but I love the humor comes back.
Oh, that's great.
They literally start making fun of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you ruler, you.
That's right.
Oh, you hero, you. And the caregivers, which are often part of an organization, right, start to feel seen and valued. And also the caregiver that's in the ruler starts to be acknowledged. It's like there are things that the leads often in organizations do that are totally overlooked because everything else is in the way.
Oh, yeah.
So the undercurrent is there. And so, they never get acknowledged half the time, and acknowledgement to me is important. And I'll either at the end of everything, either say what was the most valuable for you, or if it's a smaller group, I have them acknowledge each other, which is so powerful.
And I've seen you do that, and it never stops blowing me away.
Yeah.
The impact of that exercise.
Exactly. Yeah. And so let's face it, you're going to have more prosperity, right? Because when everybody's working together and there's not all the clicks and everything increases, you can grow and develop and just like I said, have more fun, have more. I mean, if you're not having fun and feeling fulfilled and purposeful, like what's the point?
Right.
Like,
especially if you're in a, a purpose-driven organization and you're not feeling the purpose, like as a team, and as a leader.
Don't you feel like even if you're not in a purpose-driven organization?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But you mentioned not-for-profits, earlier.
It's like,
always. I'm still hearing, Karen, the lightness that it creates, which is so perfect for your just like as a role, to be the one that comes in and like gets us all to relax a little, to let go of some of that stress and tension that exists in relationships. And the byproduct of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Not take everything so seriously.
And I'm willing to be vulnerable and exposed within these teams, because to me that creates safety. And it opens the door for real conversations. Not everybody's willing to do that. Because maybe it doesn't feel right or something like that. But for me, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, long stories or anything like that, but I'm going to be real.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that speaks to, again, having ownership of who you are. Right. And because you are unique and you're this thumbprint, this mix of archetype patterns, this, innocent, magician, jester, because of who you are going to bring, the unique value of that into organizations. And that's a gift, right? Knowing who you are and being able to show up authentically and lead them through an experience. And, in so many ways, that pattern allows you to lean into the hard questions with a lightness, like Cynthia said, that makes people pause and, do the same.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know there is so much more, Karen. I can't wait to get you back on here and talk more about what Morgan Carey Co is doing and what you guys offer. We love that you're starting with Culture Talk. We love that that's the foundation and that Robin has been brought into the network. Can't wait to hear some more experiences and stories about that. And if you are listening to us today or this recording and you're interested in having the kind of impact that Karen and her team are having, and you're interested in learning more about Culture Talk and using Archetype as a mechanism, then we've got a program for you. Cynthia, tell us about our upcoming certification.
We are going to be launching our next certification cohorts. We'll do 2, but they both start on July 11th, which is a Tuesday, and they will run for 8 Tuesdays in a row. They are 2-hour live Zoom sessions, along with a whole bunch of supporting material to take you on this journey with us, to learn about what are archetypes, what are my own archetypes, how do I show up, shift, change, grow, develop, how do I do that in relationship with other people in my organization, and how do then these same 12 story patterns apply to shared collective experiences, which we think about as workplace culture. And how do I use them in a place of work to really create that kind of deeper level change that gets at the undercurrent.
Undercurrent, yeah. Our new descriptor, the undercurrent. I love it.
Yeah, catch that wave. So if you are joining us, we'll pop into the comments here a link to our certification program. Reach out to Teresa or I. We're also happy to share with you a Culture Talk assessment and do like a little mini debrief with it, so you can taste and feel and what this system is all about and how it might apply in your world. So
yeah, yep. And Karen, where can people find you and Morgan Carey Co?
Yeah, so morgancareyco.com. And so we're still in process. So but you can contact us there. And looking forward to hearing from anyone. Yeah.
Great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
guys.
Have a great week.
Happy Memorial Day weekend too. Bye.